Last week, we talked about writing scary books, and the week before that, it was scary movies. So, of course, there's only one thing left to cover: Mongolian throat singing.
Comic book Saturday!
Oh, yeah, I forget sometimes. Let's talk about comic books. Comic books are a unique art form, a marriage of words and pictures. And people have been using that art form ever since words and pictures were invented. But it's only in the last century or so that they've elevated to the form that they're in today, where rather than a single picture with a caption, they're being used to tell long-form stories. And while some people still think of American comic books as being solely the domain of superheroes, there are a lot of other genres worth investigating, especially horror. In the 1940s and 50s, horror comic books were king in America. In fact, even if you've never read a comic book in your life, I guarantee you've heard of the juggernaut of the era, Tales from the Crypt. Publisher William Gaines's EC Comics told morality tales with a darkly fiendish twist. Most of the comic books in this series and its sister comics ended with the main character, who was usually guilty of some horrible sin, getting some sort of karmic punishment at the end. The comics were extraordinarily popular, but they wound up becoming the targets of moral crusaders like psychologist Frederick Wortham. Wortham attacked them in his book Seduction of the Innocent. Eventually, comic book publishers in North America created their own Comics Code self-censorship organization, doing it out of fear that the government would do it if they didn't. EC wound up canceling all of their comic books except for one, which they transformed into a magazine format to escape the code. You've probably heard of their only survivor, too, Mad Magazine. In the early days, the comic code was so restrictive that they couldn't even mention things like the undead, vampires, zombies, things like that. They were strictly prohibited. In the 1970s, when the code was relaxed a bit, Marvel Comics especially jumped into supernatural horror, with characters like Ghost Rider, Werewolf by Night. They even gave Dracula his own long-running title. Tomb of Dracula was a very popular comic, but these days it's probably most remembered for the character they created to hunt Dracula down, Blade. The Comics Code doesn't exist anymore, thank goodness. Now that publishers are free to explore horror as much as they want, there are a lot of different takes on it. I mentioned Robert Kirkman before. His zombie comic, The Walking Dead, was an absolute game changer. Your average zombie movie ends after 2 hours. Kirkman wanted to tell a story about what happens after the movie is over, and the heroes have to continue on with their lives. Over the course of 193 issues, he created hundreds of characters and developed a rich, intricate world that's still fun to explore. Arguably, The Walking Dead has a bigger cultural imprint than any comic book in America that wasn't published by Marvel or DC. In 2018, writer W. Maxwell Prince and artist Martin Morazzo gave us Ice Cream Man from Image Comics. This is one of the most unique horror comics you're ever going to find. Each issue is more or less self-contained, stories about characters whose internal existential dread manifests in tangible and frightening ways. And at first, the only connective tissue between the stories seems to be the appearance of this ghoulish, good humor man style Ice Cream Man who pops up in every issue. But as the series goes on, the seemingly self-contained stories turn out to have more links and shared